Live stream has started.
So does it look like we have everybody, Grant? What do you think?
I think the only other person that we're expecting Brenda to join.
That's right. Brenda's not here yet. Okay. We can wait another moment because I know we just got off another meeting.
Yes.
I know that Jim said he wouldn't be available, and I believe I don't believe Fareed is going to be joining today either. And we know Councillor Pasternak is not available, although he's not a member of the committee.
All right.
Lawrence is coming on, so that's good. We're good.
Same good. Would you like to start and if we're good to go?
Tina, do you know if Brenda's trying to, or Liz, do we know if Brenda's trying to get on?
I sent her the link, so she should be joining shortly.
We can hold another moment and
Yeah, she was having technical problems earlier, so.
no, this virtual stuff is great. It saves a lot of travel time, but it has its downside as well when it doesn't cooperate. So,
That's for sure.
and that has been, you know, some getting some adjustments for me because of course the last 8-year stretch it was always in person, pretty much exclusively. So
If I call her.
that quorum.
There's enough board members, right?
Yeah.
So Grant, I'm okay to wait for Brenda another minute or two, but if we have quorum, I don't want to hold everybody up either. So
I'll just try calling Brenda.
Yeah.
Actually calling.
Thanks, Tom.
yeah, we'll do that and then we'll start.
There she is.
Oh, here we go.
I just had to have a little break.
No worries, Brenda. We no worries. We just wanted to wait to make sure you're with us, and it's good. Okay.
Sorry,
All right.
I just had to take a break.
So let me just hang on. Okay, so we're good. So welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming again. I know some of us came from a previous meeting. I had to jump off a bit early. We got notified by my staff that I was explaining to Tina that there was a hold and secure at the community hub up on Panorama Court. I had just sent 2 of my newer staff members to represent me on something there. So of course we were very concerned about what was happening, but the good news is everything is good now. The police are there and things are under control. Nobody's hurt and everything.
Good.
So yeah.
Good.
Yeah, so I'll start with a couple of brief remarks. So at the last meeting, key item discussed was the draft content of, as you may recall, of the 2022 TSHC annual report. And that report was broken down into the 7 key categories. I won't get into, they're all there for your record, which provides an overview of TSHC's performance and summarized progress made on key initiatives. So that was a great report, and I really want to thank everyone who contributed to the work in finalizing this report. So today, agenda includes receiving updates from Tom and then also from Grant on the governance work plan update and on the board committee feedback survey as well. Just briefly in camera, because it is in camera, just suffice to say that there'll be some updates from People and Culture from David Slater and as well as Tom Hunter. I'm also very happy to report that TSHC received a clean audit opinion with no financial risks or concerns. And for today's meetings, we have no deputations. So that's the update. And then the land acknowledgement, just do that at this point. So we honor the land that we are on, which has been the site of human activity since the time immemorial. It is the traditional territories of the Huron-Wendat, Anishinaabe, and the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee. Trouble with that one. Haudenosaunee. Thank you, Confederacy. And most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit River First Nations. Ontario is covered by 46 treaties and other agreements and is home to many Indigenous nations from across Turtle Island, including the Inuit and the Metis. These treaties and other agreements, including the one dish with one spoon, Wampum Belt Covenant, are agreements to peacefully share and care for the land and its resources. Other Indigenous nations, Europeans, and newcomers were invited into this covenant in the spirit of respect, peace, and friendship. We are mindful of broken covenants, and we strive to make this right with the land and with each other. And then the African ancestral acknowledgement. We are all treaty people. Many of us have come here as settlers, immigrants, newcomers, in this generations past. We would also like to acknowledge those who came here forcibly, particularly as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. Therefore, we honor and pay tribute to the ancestors of African origin and descent. So, okay, so now the item number 3 is the approval of public meeting agenda. So, so we need I guess a mover to approve the last public meeting agenda. Do we need a seconder for these meetings as well, Grant, or just?
Yes, if you can ask for somebody to move, Councillor Chrysantian to second, then to vote on.
All right, so if we can have a mover and a seconder for the
Mr. Chair, Warren.
All right, Warren, thank you for moving, and a seconder, Brenda, thank you. So now I just want to ask if there's any conflicts of interest from anybody, and if not, then we will move on for another approval of the public minutes meeting of March 15th, 23. Again, I need a mover and a seconder.
I've read the minutes, they look fine to me. So moved.
Okay, so I think Brenda, and then
Second.
Thank you for that. And another approval of the CGHRC closed session minutes of meeting of March the 15th as well. So mover and a seconder.
Somebody else.
No, we got Brenda and
So moved. So seconded.
And Warren. Okay, good. All right. And then item number 7, action items for review. Hang on, here we go.
Oh, Mr. Chair, if you could just thank staff. I did get all the follow-up the list of the capital projects. Thank you. There was some follow-up things, and thank the staff for that.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, thanks everyone for our staff for the sorry, Brenda, that was the capital.
Yes, there was a list of capital projects I'd asked for, and there was something else. I can't see my minutes here, but just to thank the staff for that.
Okay, so yes, so let's so as we just heard from Brenda, I want to thank all staff that worked on that project. Thank you so much. So the action items for review that included, I believe I've got 7 of them here. Is that correct, Grant? There were 7 action items?
Yes, Councillor Crisanti, would you like me to bring it up on screen?
Yeah, just do that.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
Sure, I can do that. Just give me 1 second. And through the chair, Councillor Crisanti, would it help if I walk through this just quickly?
Yeah, that'd be great if you could, and then we'll and that we're only receiving for information, correct?
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
So the first 2 action items on the list go back to March of last year,
Yeah.
and they are still pending future policy work. And there was Dave. The item 3 has now been completed, and that was with Tom, and that was about board cycles and board membership. Items 4, 5, 6, and 7 came out of our March 15th meeting, and some of them are in progress and some are completed. So item 4 about a condensed version of the annual report is in development right now, so that's in progress. Item 5, it looks like the staff name got taken off by accident, but that has been completed, and that's what Brenda was referencing a minute ago, and that was a combination of Vince, Brad, and myself. Item 6, address and clarify the next stack the topic of the accessibility committee. That is something to still be dealt with STAC, so that's in progress. And item 7, with regards to the annual report, was clarity in how we report on unresolved work orders, and that would be in progress for next year's annual report. I'll take any questions or anybody else who has actions on here if there's anything.
Just a quick one. Grant, when does something become a capital project as distinct from just operational repair? Is it the dollar amount or the scope?
That's a really timely question, because I know we're working on a policy element around that right now. I might ask Vince if he could speak to that. There is a dollar limit with that, and we're looking to, I believe, mirror the policy that's at TCHC.
Sorry, through the chair. Yeah, that's correct. It is in nature of both things, both the dollar amount, which is anything above $1,500 would be considered a capital item, but also the extent of, in terms of longevity of the actual product itself, whether or not it has a sustainable future life of more than 1 year. So those are the 2 criteria that we will assess whether or not it's a capital item or an operating item.
And do we have control over the choices of those projects, or are we deferring still to Toronto Community Housing and their priority listing?
It is still with the FMO office through the TCHC. They are the one that plans and have a more comprehensive list of all the capital projects for current year and future years to come. We do have our input in terms of some of the, perhaps the buildings and the input, but they're the one that controls that component of it.
And has it proven to be conflictual at all yet, or that's time will tell?
I would say time will tell. I think right now we're in 10 months into it. We haven't had a lot of conversations with respect to the capital component, but that will be something that we would like to sort of get more involved moving forward.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Just a quick question I have, Vince. How do we arrive at $1,500 as the threshold? It sounds low.
Seems awfully low.
Yeah. That policy, and I think per Grant's earlier, that came from the original from TCHC policy, from capital policy, and we're reviewing it and also updating that component, but that came directly from TCHC.
All right, thank you, Vince. I just saw Carrie's hand there. So Carrie.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councilor. That was my question too, because living in the midst of 4.5 years of accessibility and holistic construction, it seems a very big gap between 1,500 and multiple millions, but that is the cutoff, 1,500. Okay. Thank you.
I wonder if we raised it, whether we then have more control over what we can initiate. So for example, if it was a $10,000, just as an example, that allows us to make operational decisions on anything under 10. Just a suggestion.
I guess that's a good one. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Vince.
Yeah, I think just coming from a public sector or private sector, I mean, certainly the $1,500 is a very, very low threshold. And I don't disagree with that. And certainly, you know, in the private sector, the amount is much higher for that to come into play. But it is something that we will continue to work with TCHC. Again, since they own the building and they are the ones that, you know, have the, you know, in this case here being the audited, we want to make sure that, you know, we are in compliance with their policy as well.
Is it possible, Vince, if I could add, it's a good point that both Carrie and Brenda made, that maybe to request, you know, what the process would be and what we'd have to do to have it increased to a number higher than 15, whatever that is. To have
it gives us some flexibility and able to pivot, you know, if we have to do something in this particular building, we're not beholden to previous capital decisions made. So that would be, I would be more emphatic. I would suggest it should be raised and give us that level of flexibility.
Mr. Chairman?
Who's speaking?
It's me, Warren.
Hey, Warren, go ahead.
It's not only a question of flexibility. Having such a low threshold has profound financial statement implications. It's crazy.
Right. I think we're all in agreement, right?
That sums that up.
So can we get moving on this? Because that's ridiculous.
Yeah, sorry, Warren. You're suggesting we also increase it, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And I bet you that's what Lawrence is going to say next.
Yeah, Lawrence
next. Vince, do you know any impact of public sector accounting board standards here? Probably there is something in there as well.
Good point.
Please have it.
Yeah, I think we can, sorry, through the chair, I think we can certainly look through that and then review that further. I mean, we will have consultations with TCHC as well. And I think that I don't know when was the last time the policy was updated. And so we can certainly review that and see what the next step would look like. But I can certainly look into that further as well, Lawrence, and then try to find out if there's any additional requirements there. Yeah.
So if I could ask Tom or Grant, normally what we would do at a committee on council, we would have a motion asking staff to review this policy and report back on options. Is this an undertaking or a motion? I'd rather formalize it if we can to make sure that
it gets done. Yeah.
Through the chair, it's Tom. I would just like to ask that maybe Brad provide some comment on this. I think one on the relationship with TCHC around the cap, because I do believe he has quite a bit of contact, and also on the 1,500. Brad?
Through the chair, the 1,500 is an industry standard that's used in co-ops and nonprofits, and to change it now would have an impact on our budget. Every kitchen that is replaced, every bathroom that is renovated would now be required to come out of our operating costs as opposed to the capital.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
In addition to that, just to add, we do have access to a regional capital fund for items like this, to pay for kitchens, to pay for bathrooms, a $10,000 threshold kind of capital projects that each of the regional managers has accountability for within their unit.
How much is that?
Some say in it. And we do have regular meetings with TCHC and their capital planning department to be involved in larger projects where we look at the building condition and things like that. But to make a change like this mid-year would have a massive impact on our ability to deliver a balanced budget at the end of the year.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's a slippery slope, I think you're saying to,
Yes, sir.
okay. All right, how about we just pause on that for now and then we'll revisit it. All right, thank you. So the other thing too, I would normally do on a motion to receive is something we vote on. Do you normally vote on motions to receive here?
So through the chair, Councillor Crisanti, usually at the committee level, we are just receiving. We don't do motions to receive. I know at the city you would.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
just a reference in terms of how to follow up on, I know we just basically, you just paused that particular item, but there are different ways that could be considered for that. One would be, we could add it to the action item list. So you know, it's not quite as structured as a motion to request a report back. That could be an alternative as well, but we have been essentially working through as these meetings progress to track actions like that, what we just went through, and would add that to the list and then monitor it that way. And then sometimes those actions get followed up offline in between meetings, as for example, the capital item was. So
very good suggestion.
If we're comfortable with that for these types of things, I think that we could proceed. Obviously on this one, you're pausing, but on similar things.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm pausing, but we could add it to the action item list then, Grant, and take it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That's
we
fine.
could still add it to the action list and still follow up with additional information based on this conversation.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
All
Because then, like Brad's comment about there being regional funds, well, how much is in the kitty and how flexible and easy is it to access? And if there's sufficient funds in that regional fund, then that might accomplish the same goals, right?
Okay.
We can have that added to the list.
Yeah. Thank
you. Thanks so much. So that was 7. 8, we have a report from Tom Hunter.
Yeah, through the chair. Thank you. And to the committee, this is, I have 2 items that I want to update on today. And just first of all, is on with the directors, with the hiring of the 4 directors. You know that Arlene has been confirmed in her role as the interim director of Communication, Engagement, and Partnerships. Brad has been confirmed as the Director of Operations, and we are now at the process of interviewing for the Director of Business Management and Strategy, and then also for People and Culture. So we are on that, and just wanted to keep the committee up to date on that. And then secondly, and I just have some notes here that Grant and his staff have put together for me. It was raised, it was either at a previous committee or board meeting around the naming of one of our locations. And so we have done, that work has been done in that area. And I think it's just important to keep the committee knowledgeable about where we are and the progress on it. And Councillor Pasternak had raised that. So realizing the importance to him as well, we're keeping this moving forward. But previously, Toronto City Councillor Mike Cole had proposed, this was over a year and a half ago, to TCHC to honor former City Councillor and Toronto Metropolitan Housing Company Chair Michael Feldman by renaming 336 Bathurst Street to the Michael Feldman Place. And so there was some research done by TCHC finding that the City of Toronto is creating a new method for recognizing public figures through street names and public buildings. And then, as I guess it was 6 weeks ago or so, we received a request from Toronto Community Housing that Toronto Seniors Housing follow up on this matter. We are moving forward and understanding that the city now has a structured approach to renaming buildings, and we will mirror that City of Toronto process, criteria, and principles. And so the new process will include a consultation, mandatory consultation with tenants who are affected by the name. The new process will also require the written consent of the named party or the named party's representative for that. And then we will also be bringing a report to the QTM board outlining, just confirming this process. So we are looking for a QTE in July, and so we would certainly have more information at that point as well. But just want to let the committee know that work is underway. Any questions?
So does that mean they're not keen on using public figures for naming, or
Well,
is this just a different procedure going to be employed?
Grant, I don't know whether you have more history on the revision of that process. I'll direct that. I'll just ask you to respond.
Thank you, Tom. So through the chair. So there is not a particular position around having a preference for public figures or not, but there are criteria that have been set up that the City of Toronto has in their guidelines. And then we would ultimately look at those criteria and look to set our own reflection on that criteria to help us assess that request. And so there is a process that the city has outlined that gives us guidance on how to do that. And we're in contact with the Strategic Partnerships Group, the city, which is where this is managed. We'll bring back more information because we ultimately would have to set some criteria building on what the city has in their guidelines.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Carrie.
Yeah, it's Carrie. I got the impression from Councillor Pasternak's comments back that he was looking at it as a potential revenue source. Am I the only one who?
Make money off naming buildings.
I thought that's how it was. I thought that's what was inferred.
Yeah, no, through the chair, Carrie, I don't. You
don't recall that?
No.
Might have been a senior's moment.
If anybody else was at that meeting and heard differently, I mean.
Yeah, well, and it's a good thing we're putting together a plan for it. That makes sense, but I thought that was all right. Clearly not.
Just through the chair, and Carrie, to your question, we do have the original request and the information that was provided by Councillor Cole that originally went to the TCHC process and now has been referred over to TSHC. So it did not mention anything in that spirit. It was more about the contribution that Michael Thalben had sort of provided to the community and the housing sector. So nonetheless, there will need to be additional follow-up on that. And so there's essentially a process the city has that we will adopt for the most part, with some aspects of setting some criteria and making sure that consultation with the community has taken place.
Thank you, Grant.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, then Carrie, was there another question? Sorry. No? Okay. Then we'll move on to what looks like items 9 and 10. Grant, they're both there as governance work plan update and board committee feedback survey. So then I'll pass those two on to you back to back.
Thank you, Councillor Crisanti. So I'll provide the committee with an update on the governance work plan. So just as a bit of a background, back in September of last year, and Mary helped with a lot of this work, as some of you will recall. Initial conversations were held with this committee with regards to different aspects of how we could look at setting a work plan and different topics and themes within which we could look at how we might ultimately assess the governance within TSHC. And some initial priorities were set by this committee. That then went forward in November of last year to CGHR and ultimately to board as well. If you recall, back in March of this year, we had a board workshop with regards to this plan. And I'm going to bring up on the other screen in a second the outcome of that, which was circulated out to all board members subsequent to that session in March. This is now the work plan that we are working to, and it has also been folded into the roadmap for the interim strategic directions. So if you recall, when we brought the interim strategic directions forward at the last board meeting, we were looking at trying to wrap those more detailed work plans into the interim strategic directions. So I'll just bring this up on my other screen to just refresh. I'll give a quick update on some of these items. And this can certainly be sent back out for a refresh to folks as well. You would have it in earlier emails. Can everybody see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when we went through, so the original plan is in the font that's just a regular black font, but the red was stuff that was really added at that workshop on March the 10th. So just to give you a reference point, there were some outcomes, and this is part of a larger presentation deck that was actually circulated at the time. So this is a subset. Just focus on some updates really in the Q2, Q3 space right now, because that's where we are. So the first item on governance, foundations, principles, and structure, we have an item there to participate in the strategic financial sustainability plan, and we are actively engaged with that process and working with the city and with TCHC on that. So that is a work in progress, which we do expect to conclude by the end of Q2 or potentially early Q3. With regards to board responsibilities and oversight, there are a number of things in this particular space, the first being tenant-facing policies, and there have been updates that have been going through QTE with regards to a couple of tenant-facing policies under review right now, in particular use of space and the tenant action funds. Those will continue to move forward and are in process right now with a plan to bring back updates at the July QTE. There's also a piece of work ongoing there with regards to setting future tenant-facing priority policy direction. So there are some other policies in consideration for the future review that haven't yet been concluded in terms of setting those priorities, but we'll bring that forward as well. So that's well underway. And there's also some policy cleanup work happening post-transition. There is still some work actually after the transition of the corporation in process. So quite a few things happening there. And I think at a future meeting, we will bring a more detailed update on the broader policy landscape to CGHR so that you can see more specifically some of the things and the number of policies and where we are and things like that, not just the priority ones. So we'll plan that for a future meeting if that sounds good. With regards to CEO performance agreement and performance, this is something that has gone through the committee and will continue to go through the committee, and the committee will be engaged in that in advance of it being brought forward through to board. And Tom can speak to that. With regards to risk management and business continuity at a high level, this is a topic that has come up also at AFRC, as some members here would be aware of. And we are planning to bring on board a third-party consultant to help us to develop an initial review of a risk management assessment, and then a more detailed review and business continuity plan into 2024. That is something that is detailed more specifically in our interim strategic directions. That work has to start, and the intent is to have some of that really in place by the latter part of Q3. The implementation of the interim strategic directions and quality improvement project recommendations. So the interim strategic directions, we have completed those in terms of the content, and they did go through for approval at board at the last April 27th board meeting. We will be returning to the June 29th board meeting with the updated view of that in terms of how we're going to communicate and sort of we'll call it the design view, similar to how the annual report went through a content phase and then a design phase. It's going through the design phase now. And then with regards to the quality improvement projects, working through updates to the quality QTE committee as well upcoming, and to board for the June 29th meeting. We're essentially at the conclusion of the 3 projects. The pest management has now concluded all of the meetings, all 5 meetings. The safety and security has concluded all 5 meetings. There are actually more than 5 meetings through the process ultimately, but the 5 official meetings. And the final meeting for staff and tenant relations QIP is tomorrow, actually. There's a lessons learned activity going on. There are final reports coming from the facilitator. And this will all be wrapped up in a report coming forward to QTE as well, or from QTE and then to board. So those recommendations are well underway. I'll just let this committee know that when you package up all of those, there's over 70 recommendations coming through the quality improvement projects. And a prioritization exercise was embedded in the conversations, but will also be something to follow up on, because there were a significant number of improvement ideas that were arrived at. I'll just quickly go to the next slide. On governance processes for Q2 and Q3, we have make foundation documents available to board members. This relates back to a comment, and I recall, Lawrence, you had made at an earlier meeting, and I know you did send out some links at the time to help the board members. We have adjusted the content on the website, for example, to make it a little bit more clear as to where board members can find their specific related policies. And there are also some other foundational documents there, for example, the shareholder direction, our bylaw, and things like that. So those are now linked and hopefully a little easier to find for board members. We are also working through a sort of a complementary piece of work right now to organize the policies in general for all folks that might be looking for policies, whether they're board members, tenants, or staff, or members of the public. And then the last piece, board effectiveness, post-meeting questionnaires, and new member orientation. So we'll talk about the post-meeting questionnaire in a moment. That's the next item on today's agenda. So we are prepared to move forward on that. And the new member orientation, we are in process of working together. There is already a package of materials that was developed back when the board was originally formed, that we then use with orientation for when Councillor Crisanti and Councillor Pasternak joined. We use a subset of that material to help support orientation, and we're in contact with the city public appointments group right now in preparation for future board orientation requirements with the board appointment process happening next month. So we'll be prepared to work on that. I think it's a piece of work that will require a bit more of a longer term view as well. So this is something we'll continue to work to improve upon. I'll take any questions at this stage.
Any questions? Brenda?
Yeah, thank you. Just quick ones. Can you go back the previous slide there? Risk management, is that technically our committee's oversight responsibility?
Technically, it would go through audit finance.
Audit, that's what I thought. Okay. Tenant facing policies. What do you mean by that? You mean
So
like
there are
policy manuals, guidelines? Like, what do you mean by that?
No, these would more so it's policies that have some sort of a direct interface with tenants. So for example, the eviction prevention and arrears collection process and policy, that would be one, for example. Currently, the tenant action funds or the tenant funds distribution policy is another one because it has a direct interaction with tenants.
Right.
It's not some of our, for example, our people and culture or HR policies. It's not one of our finance policies. These are tenant facing policies.
Okay.
Other ones that will be in there, things like our transfer policy, for example, complaints, different things around stuff like that. So
that will come to this committee?
It would actually go through QTE at some level.
That's what I thought, yeah.
However, in terms of overall policy governance, there would be updates at this level.
Okay. And lastly, the partnership agreements, oversight of partnership agreements. I'm assuming here you're talking about Toronto Community Housing, or are you talking about other partnerships that we have with other suppliers or contractors or?
That would be more broad partnerships that
Okay.
TSHC would have, not specifically with Toronto Community Housing.
Okay. So at what point, God willing and the creek don't rise, at what point do we get access or review the agreement we'll have with Toronto Community Housing?
Do you mean sorry, Brenda, but through the chair, are you referencing a future agreement, I think?
Well, we don't have one really now because we're still in that negotiating phase. So, and I know you can't give me a definite date, but I'm asking, will that come back to us, or it's a fait accompli and we're just reviewing it because of what's been decided?
So maybe through the chair. So we do have 2 existing agreements that are in effect right now with regards to our relationship with Toronto Community Housing.
I remember that one.
We do have a transition agreement, which is the overarching relationship vehicle between the 2 corporations that in effect is in place of what was envisioned to be a lease agreement.
Yes.
Originally with Toronto Community Housing and Toronto Senior. So that's in place right now, and we're still using that agreement. And so that is a reference point for how we operate and work with TCHC right now.
Yeah.
And within that transition agreement, there are provisions within which certain impediments need to be removed to be able to move to a different type of agreement. So that would be an initial guide for the types of things that need to be addressed to actually move forward. There's also, separate to the transition agreement, we do also have a service delivery agreement with Toronto Community Housing as well, which articulates in more detail the specific provisions around different services that they provide to us. In some cases, we could call those the shared services as well.
Okay.
So
So what we're waiting for then is the newly revised conceptualized lease agreement between the two bodies. Is that what's outstanding?
ultimately, there is an intent to move towards either a lease agreement or a different legal arrangement with
Okay.
Toronto Community Housing. It may be something different than what was originally envisioned. And I think some of the work that's ongoing with regards to our financial relationship, for example, with TCHC would influence some of those.
Yeah, yeah.
And in terms of the actual work required to remove the impediments, that would need to be discussed with them. To our knowledge, there's significant effort that would still need to be undertaken to remove some of those impediments. And I don't believe we have line of sight to when that work would actually potentially be done.
Okay, so, and the remaining partnership agreements, are they contractors or, you know, like you mentioned there were other partnership agreements, so other than the Toronto Community Housing, what are the other partnership ones? You're talking about ones we have with Ministry of Health or
So, yeah.
what's included under that phrase?
So partnership agreements would be, could be through the chair, could be interpreted broadly.
Okay.
So it would include, so for example, at the last Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee meeting recently, there was an update on programs and partnerships that was brought forward.
Right.
And in there, it referred to a number of different types of partnership agreements that are in place, everything from agreements with head lease agreements, referral agreements, also referencing things like use of space and the agreements for programming essentially in buildings with either with tenants or with service providers to provide that
Right.
programming.
Okay, those ones I'm concerned about. So they'll be coming to us?
They will, they're going to flow through the Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee in terms of that those types of that type of work. I guess we could take an action to consider what level of information would flow through here. This is an area, because of what it's called on the plan of board responsibilities and oversight, one of the board's responsibilities in general oversight is around the partnership space.
Well, that's my concern. I've been waiting for over a year to be able to review these things and get a sense of what these partnerships are and where there may be some problematic areas. So I've been waiting and waiting and waiting. So I guess my concern here is show me the meat, so to speak. I mean, will we be getting some of that so we can see the nature of those relationships and ask some questions of it?
So I do believe through the chair, Brenda, that there is intent to build upon the information that was provided at QTE and subsequent committees, for example, committee meetings, and also potentially bring partners to come and speak to the committee as well. And that's something we can take as an action, maybe to loop back within our team to follow up on, but there's definitely an intent to expand upon the effort and the focus on the partnership space and the program.
See, Grant, it's not that I want to intervene in operational matters, because that's not what we're supposed to do. My concern here is I feel I have an obligation, responsibility for fiscal seriousness and management here, and we're dealing and having partnerships with people. I mean, I see the chart that you gave recently of the community partners, you know, who use our space, and I appreciate that list. But until I see that sense, I don't know who are we talking about, and my issue is one of transparency and accountability, and I can't see how I can measure accountability if I don't know who we're dealing with, number one, and if I don't know what the nature of our partnership is with them, and whether they're doing the job that we thought they were going to be doing. So my interest here in asking for information on all these partnerships is so I can fulfill my duty as a board member, and I don't feel I am, because I still don't have this information in front of me. And I know in the fullness of time we'll be getting things, but I really want to stress, and maybe putting it on the action list will help me get some action on this. I cannot, in my humble opinion, fulfill what I see as my duties and responsibilities of managing, as a board member, and managing and directing an organization if I don't know who we're doing business with, right? And are they delivering?
So through the chair, Brenda, I think your idea to put it on the action list is probably a reasonable approach.
Okay.
And with regards to the item as shown on the governance work plan, we'll do and in that same action, I think we could do a bit more detailed analysis of what the scope of that partnership agreement and effectiveness zone means on that work plan.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I think it will dovetail well with the work that is getting going with the organizational realignment and the stuff that Arlene will be bringing forward with the team going forward as well.
And the organizational realignment, you mean with us in Toronto Community Housing?
No, I mean, sorry, I meant with the new director, like Arlene is now in the place of the director.
Oh, yes, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So there's a new focused emphasis on that.
That's true. All right. That's a very good point. Thank you for reminding us of that. That's true. Okay, I agree. I think that's fine. That will start to cover some of my concerns.
Thank you, Brenda. And Carrie, you have your hand up, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Just very, very quickly. Grant, the two legal agreements with TCHC that you referenced, is that around the 23.5%?
So the 23.5% is one of the factors that is used in the agreement. Yes.
Right. That may or may not be accurate.
Well, it is accurate in terms of a proportion of the portfolio of buildings, but in terms of how it gets applied into the different service areas is what needs to be reviewed.
It's still for discussion.
Yes, and they don't use 23.5 in all cases, but in many cases. And for example, upcoming at AFRC, Vince is preparing some reporting right now that will articulate some of this in a little more detail as to how that kind of breaks out with our things like our reconciliation associated with costs in these agreements.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, that'll be good to hear. Thank you.
All right, thank you. If there's no further questions on that item, Grant, do you want to start on the board committee feedback survey then?
Sure, thank you. So I just, if you can give me 1 second, I just want to get that up on my screen. So coming out of, so through the chair, coming out of, oh, I didn't share the screen, sorry.
Oh, you're like me,
Coming out of the
right?
governance, pardon me?
You're like me, you can't figure out the technology.
And but back and forth between the two screens and different files open and stuff. Just want to make sure I bring up the right thing.
Yeah.
So as part of the governance work plan that I just reviewed, and through discussions that came at the March 10th session as well, there was an interest in having more data associated with how we're functioning in these meetings. So we basically looked at some surveys that are used in other board settings to come up with a very simple, easy to administer survey that we would send out after each committee and board meeting to gather feedback from board members as to a combination of how the meeting went from both a preparation perspective and then the delivery of the meeting, the actual meeting was conducted and whether the outcome was successful. So we prepared this survey that I'm sharing right now. This is the Word version of the survey. We would put it into an online tool and send this out as a link at the end of each meeting. And you could quickly fill this in less than a minute probably, or very shortly. And we would have data that we could bring back to future meetings and planning. The idea is to start to capture this information to inform improvements as we get further along through the year. So some of it maybe require a few meetings of data before we start to fully analyze it, but we'll definitely get some good feedback, I think, from this quickly. If we notice that there's something completely unique happening, then we'll be able to address it more quickly as we progress into future meetings. So the first half of the survey would be the meeting agenda and materials, first 3 questions. The second, meeting discussion, facilitation, and outcomes. And it would be something that we would send out, as I noted, and I'll take any questions.
Just a question. What was the problem we were seeking to address with the creation of this board meeting survey? Was it just to get board feedback? I just want to make sure we don't end up having one of those things where we agree with everything and then it becomes a useless survey because you're going to answer yes to everything.
I think there were a couple of things that have come up in the past through the chair. for example, is there sufficient time for discussion on items based on the item at hand? Are the materials sufficiently addressing the level of information that the board or committee is expecting to be able to meaningfully discuss and review items? And I know in the past we've had conversations at different committee meetings about ensuring that we have effective meetings, effective dialogue at the different committee and or board level, and how to balance the level of the discussion happening at the board level versus the committee level, things like that. So I think this simple survey will give us an idea as to whether or not committee members are feeling like the discussions were effective. And then if we start to see trends or patterns, we can look to adjust. And this will give us more information to ultimately base potential future adjustments on. So I think it's a simple tool for us to get a sense as to whether the committee members, board members felt the meeting went well, if we were rushed, if we had enough time in advance to prepare, things like that. And then we could make adjustments accordingly down the road.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, if I may make a comment or question.
Yeah, Warren, go ahead.
Grant, this is a great initiative. I've used it on a number of other boards, and it's worked well. Of course, the onus is on the members of the committee or the board to make sure that they fill out the surveys. One area that I don't see on this that you may want to consider is, given the fact that we're so technology dependent, and the fact that not in-person meetings will probably continue for a long time. I know at one of my other boards we have a question about facility to access the meeting. How easy was it to access the meeting? And for example, today, if I were to have been asked that question, I probably would have said no. It wasn't very easy, because for both the meeting with EY and this meeting, I would have preferred to have done it by phone. But when I used the phone number that was given in the materials, it didn't work out. So access to the meeting, how easy was it? Words to that effect.
Through the chair, thank you, Warren, for that feedback. We can consider looking at the survey to include that sort of question as well. And as an aside, we are looking, although we don't have a specific timeline, but we are looking to move towards a combination of in-person and online or hybrid meetings going forward.
Yeah.
And we are planning for that as we get closer and closer to being able to fully utilize the space at our head office here at 423 Yonge.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Thank you, Warren. Any other questions, Brenda?
Is there a space on this survey for an open-ended answers? Or is it just the tick off?
We are flexible. Originally, we had thought about including a section for general comments. However, we did also receive some feedback. We ran this by Fareed, for example, as well. And the concern was that it would be too open-ended potentially, and to try to focus on the specific questions.
Yes.
So,
No, I like the idea that it is a check, and I assume every one of these will have a button or a thing that we can say agree, disagree, whatever for each question.
yeah, the scale is up here. Sorry, I didn't. It's
Right.
strongly disagree,
Yeah.
agree, strong.
So that will apply to each question.
That's correct.
So you'll have to reformat this, I guess. And then I would just put at the very end any of the additional comments. And most times there'll be nothing, but don't put it at the end of every question, but just at the very end of the survey.
Okay, thank you for that feedback.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good point. I was, Brenda, I was gonna ask that as well, because I see it in many surveys, and it could be very useful if you don't necessarily capture
Exactly.
the person's comments in your 7 questions. Then we all have an opportunity to make very briefly, and if you like, you could indicate that, just a small space, very briefly, a couple of comments that weren't captured, and that could be helpful.
We can certainly do that, and so I appreciate the feedback of the committee on this. Our goal is to implement this for the June board meeting, June 29th board meeting.
Okay, so you mean implement, make it
Survey.
available, make it available for,
Make it available,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
right, thank you.
All
So, all right, that's the conclusion of that. Now, item 11, I guess I'm going to need a motion to move into closed session. And we'll do that to deal with the items in the,
Oh, I thought we were closed.
So move, Mr. Chair.
okay,
Seconded, Carrie?
thank you, Carrie. And so now, do we need a moment to get confirmation that we are in closed session?
Live stream has ended.
All right, thank you.